In this cartoon, the Santa Claus has an ecstatic look on his face because the little girl sitting on his lap has her hand inside his pants. In this one, the Santa Claus has his pants around his ankles as he rapes an obviously frightened little girl on his lap. The Santa images become especially violent, even bloody, such as this one, where the Santa character has just murdered a child with a machine gun. The child's bloody body lies on the floor. The caption reads, "That'll teach you to be a good boy." There are literally thousands of such cartoons, cataloged and analyzed by Dr. Reisman. These images have been published by the soft porn industry for more than half a century. But by far the most disturbing collection comes from Larry Flynt's Hustler magazine. For years, Hustler published the cartoon Chester the Molester.
It's part of a series in which this man was attacking children.
The classic Chester cartoon is this one, where Chester sits naked in a chair with three young girls who have obviously been kidnapped, bound, and raped. The caption coming from the TV reads, "It is 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?" Dr. Reisman believes that because of suggestive imagery like this, many parents don't know where their children are. Sadly, some of them will never see their children again. Chester the Molester was the invention of Hustler's head cartoonist, Dwayne Tinsley, shown here in the 1985 documentary, Rated X, where he explains the character of Chester.
And Chester's the character that I do for the magazine. You have this dirty old guy that would do anything to trap a young girl.
When you say young girl, how young do you mean?
Well, at that particular time, he was after the younger ones, 10, 12. His idea is that he wants to get all little girls.
Look again carefully at this disturbing image, where Chester is writing information on a notepad, almost as if he were recording data like one of Kinsey's pedophiles.
First of all, if he's going to trap a little girl, you know, the idea for him would be to knock her out or something. I don't know. I mean, he didn't have to actually use a club or a bat. He could have smacked her, but just the idea of the bat is a little goofier, would better than a baseball bat. I mean, it was just always with him. He was going to hit the little girl over the head with, trap her, hit the little girl with his club, and drag her off to his lair, as it were. Whether she was going to have fun or not, it was never established.
This same attitude seems to have carried into Tinsley's own life. 4 years after appearing in this documentary, Tinsley's daughter would testify in court that she had been repeatedly raped by Tinsley himself. In 1989, Dwayne Tinsley was tried and convicted as a child rapist, in part because of the research on his work done by Dr. Reisman.
There's just no question at all that those cartoons that we showed, that they showed the jury, were absolute evidence of the crimes he had committed on his daughter, as testified by his daughter.
During the trial, the jury was shown one of Tinsley's cartoons, which depicted a father molesting his teenage daughter. The caption reads, "Gee, I'd love to go to the drive-in, Tommy, but my dad has some, extra household chores for me tonight." In court, Tinsley's daughter claimed that her father showed her this cartoon and said to her, "This is you and me." The Associated Press reported that Tinsley often said, "You can't write this stuff all the time if you don't experience it."
There's no normal human being that can draw those things, that can put that kind of idea out there to the public, who is not experiencing that themselves. No, that's just not going to happen.
But Tinsley was not alone. His employer, Larry Flynt, was also accused by his daughter, Tanya Flint Vega, in her book, Hustled, in which she claimed that her father used the Chester the Molester cartoons to introduce her to the idea of sex, and then raped her when she was only 9 years old. Like many pedophiles, Larry Flynt was never charged with a crime and openly denied his daughter's allegations. Even Hugh Hefner is said to have been guilty of statutory rape. According to biographer Russell Miller in his book, Bunny, The Real Story of Playboy, Hefner himself enjoyed making love to a schoolgirl who had attended his daughter's Sweet 16 birthday party. Miller's evidence was based on the testimony of the staff that worked in the Playboy mansion at the time. As with Larry Flynt, Hefner was never charged with a crime. A major breakthrough for Hefner's Playboy magazine and child pornographers in general was the film Pretty Baby, starring Brooke Shields. A film briefly remembered during the recent controversy over the images of 15-year-old Miley Cyrus. Pretty Baby was the story of a 12-year-old girl who grows up with a prostitute mother and ends up losing her virginity in a whorehouse. People magazine ran a story saying Brooke Shields, 12, stirs a furor over child porn in films. Playboy featured images from the film, along with an interview with the film's director, Louis Malle. In the interview, Malle said, "When Playboy requested a photo that would express my personal vision of eroticism, I sent a shot of my 2-year-old daughter, Justine, naked. This led to the photos above of Brooke Shields, whom I cast in the title role of my new film, Pretty Baby." As early as 1971, Reader's Digest published an article titled "What Sex Offenders Say About Pornography." The article cited the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports, stating that between 1960 and 1969, the number of forcible rapes committed by males under 18 had increased by 86%. It could be concluded that some force impelling towards sex crime has been operating on younger males in the United States. The period described by the FBI was one in which Playboy magazine had been the principal form of widespread pornography in America, especially the kind that would find its way into the hands of underage males. Then in the 1980s, the Surgeon General C. Everett Koop called pornography a clear and present danger to American public health. And who could forget the disturbing warning given by serial killer Ted Bundy in his final interview with Dr. James Dobson just hours before his execution in 1989.
Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography.
Despite these warnings, the so-called soft porn industry has been normalized in America, partly because some of the most powerful social and political leaders of the last half-century have given interviews and appeared in these magazines, helping to make them part of America's mainstream. Perhaps most famous was Jimmy Carter's Playboy interview in 1976 as a presidential candidate. While ultimately considered a political blunder, it undoubtedly sent a message of acceptability to the up-and-coming generation, to those who, in time, would end up running the country. As such, what sort of decisions would they make on behalf of America's women and children? It is also important to consider that the warnings from Ted Bundy and the Surgeon General were given years before the widespread use of the Internet, where today, pornography is available to the masses like never before in history.
The Internet, I'm not trying to say is a real negative and dark thing. There's a lot of positive and good things coming out of the Internet, but people need to be aware of the dark element that the Internet provides to people. And it's in a very private, secret place, so people can keep can be anonymous. Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, to go to a porn shop, you'd have to go to a seedy part of town and people would recognize you. It's not that way anymore. It comes right into your house. And that's why I think it's so dangerous.
The idea that pornography doesn't really hurt anyone is a fallacious argument. How many marriages, how many tens of thousands, perhaps millions of people are hurting in their relationships because of pornography?
And the guy who watches porn is basically probably going to get addicted to the porn. And if he does ever get married, sex is never going to be right because he's going to be so obsessed with the pornography that's not even real anyways. I believe that God intended sex to be between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife.
You want to explain the images on the computer?
This is nothing right here.
You know, just because you're not out with some other woman doesn't mean that you're not being unfaithful to our marriage.
What else do you need? What do you need?
I want my husband to be faithful. I want my husband to be a father to his children. I don't want him in his office watching pornography and telling me that he's trying to meet deadlines.
It's said that the greatest myth about pornography is that nobody gets hurt. Some even argue that porn is a healthy outlet for men and women alike. But has this really proven to be the case? Or does an addiction to porn create a kind of shadow person, someone who ends up leading a double life? One that the rest of those in his world can only wonder about. And when his dark secrets are finally brought into the light, what will be revealed? One who understands the dark temptations of pornography is former Penthouse producer J. Gator Henry, who claims he narrowly escaped a lifestyle that became so extreme it almost landed him in prison.
I'll say that, you know, but for the grace of God, there go I when I see these men that are being arrested on the news.
As a former producer for Penthouse magazine, Gator rubbed elbows with some of the big celebrities in Hollywood, including Ozzy Osbourne and Pamela Anderson. And as you would expect, his work exposed him to countless Penthouse models.
Man, it was an ego rush to be around the most beautiful women in the world and then running around naked. And to a lot of men in America, you know, I had the dream job. I mean, I was their hero. I was doing what everybody thought was the greatest thing in the world that a man could be doing for a profession.
Gator believes his addiction to pornography began with a troubled childhood.
My uncle had molested me when I was a child, and he ended up confessing that to me prior to his death from AIDS a few years ago, so I had that event in my life, and then I also remember when I was young finding a penthouse in my father's bedroom closet. And boy, I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread when I found that thing. And you know, when you're at that age and everything else, and so I immediately was hooked on the whole thing. So it's kind of interesting that everything turned around and ended up working for Penthouse. And pornography, especially printed pornography, people think that Penthouse or Playboy or whatever is innocent. And I'm here to say that it's absolutely not. Having also a drug past myself, marijuana is a stepping stone in the drug world, Penthouse magazine or Playboy magazine is a stepping stone in the porn world. You start there, it's not going to end there.
Gator claims that the steps on his journey through pornography led him into deeper and darker levels of perversion. Eventually, he found himself on the brink of criminal behavior.
It got so bad where I would get on the internet. Again, I was just consumed. The ages of the girls I was looking at, in order for me to get the rush and to get that tingle, that buzz that I wanted to get from the sexual side of it, what happens is you start looking at younger and younger images, younger and younger pictures of girls. And what happened for me one day was, the thought just slammed to me that I probably have done things and probably had images on my computer at that time that could have put me in prison. I look at these men who abduct these young girls and they molest them and kill them, bury them alive or whatever they do, stab them multiple times and stuff. And I know that those men, like me, they didn't wake up, they didn't start off, they didn't grow up as little boys saying, oh, my ambition in life is grow up to be a child molester and killer. And I know for a fact, with everything in the marrow of my bones, because I've been there, I've walked and lived it, that pornography took them to that place where just your average Joe